Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Talking Point. My name is Faraz Patel. Jazakallah so much for staying with us here on Hilaal TV channel 347 on DSTV. Of course, we have seen the government of national unity formed weeks after the national and provincial elections. What we saw, of course, in the National Assembly and, of course, in the provincial legislatures is a change of many new parties coming into the frame. Of course, one of those parties is ActionSA, but they were there contesting the 2021 local government elections and, of course, earned seats within the councils of the metros, especially within Gauteng, when you look at the city of Ekurhuleni, city of Johannesburg, and city of Tshwane. Now, ActionSA were able to garner 4 seats in Parliament. They earned just over 6 seats. Is it 6 seats in Parliament? Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Mashaba, who is my guest, has just corrected me. 6 seats in Parliament with just over 192,000 votes. Joining me now, you heard his voice. It is Herman Mashaba, the leader of ActionSA. Mr. Mashaba, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you and your listeners and engaged on the issues pertinent to what's happening to our country as we speak.
Definitely. Thank you so much for correcting me there on that being 6 seats in the National Assembly. Mr. Mashaba, a lot of effort was put in your election campaign, in ActionSA's election campaign. When you reflect on it, is there a sense of satisfaction, sense of disappointment? How do you put it down to it?
No, well, definitely I expected ActionSA to have performed much better than we did. However, I actually look at it in reflection. In the beginning, I was really very confused there, and what was obviously of concern to me when the results were coming out, realizing, my goodness, South Africans on their own now. 60 years after the death of the apartheid architect H.F. Verwoerd, the South Africans have actually decided 30 years into democracy to vote along identity lines. Blacks voting for black parties, whites voting for white parties, coloreds voting for colored political parties. Whereas just 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela actually gave us this miracle, because it was a miracle what we achieved in 1994, because some of us growing up, the way the National Party was vicious in dividing us along racial lines, brutal, evil system. We never thought one day we'll see a peaceful transition. But Nelson Mandela actually brought hope to us. And we had Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who was there from a religious point of view, brought the concept of the Rainbow Nation. And all of us actually quite excited at the time that one day South Africa is going to be the beacon of hope for the entire world community. And the world bought into this. But here am I was confused after the elections that South Africans on their own, without Verwoerd, without the brutal, evil apartheid government, all of us decided to really go into our own lagers. And I said, my goodness, we're in big trouble. And that obviously led to the formation of this grand coalition being sold as a government of national unity. I'm actually quite saying to myself, you know what, Herman, there are certain things in life, you win them directly. Some of them, you win them on a long-term basis. And I'm actually more determined than ever before. And I look at our position as ActionSA, that looking at this grand coalition of the ANC and DA, that basically we sit in a country where there's no real opposition any longer. Because you've got the ANC on one hand with socialist, corrupt, inept government, and on the other hand, you've got the DA, which is actually on the right of the Freedom Front Plus, I'm not really sure how these two are going to be able to form a stable government. But I hope and wish that they succeed, because that's what we've got at the moment. But then I see a big opportunity for a political party like ActionSA to hold them accountable. It's for that reason we refuse as ActionSA to really be part
Yeah,
of this government of
I
national unity.
want you to touch on that, because obviously your votes that you garnered, or the seats that you garnered within the National Assembly, would have presented you with that opportunity to join the GNU. What was it from a supposed standpoint of ethics would ActionSA not have joined the GNU? What was it when you sat with your Senate and your
Well, it's
members
not
that,
even
yeah,
Senate. Before
yeah,
even sitting with Senate, the ANC wanted to me send some people to even to talk to me down, because obviously, as you have indicated to you, I wasn't born yesterday. So some of people in the ANC, I know them personally over many years. We family friends. We grew up together. They did whatever possible for me to be part of this government of national unity. But I knew this is not the government of national unity. It's a grand coalition, and obviously with the experience of knowing the other side, which is the DA, knowing their dishonesty and the approach to the political landscape, for them to not recognize that black people are poor. Poor not because they want to be poor, they're poor because of many years of colonialism, apartheid, and including ANC's 30 years of mismanagement. We need to address this. And obviously, DA believes black people will be taken care of by a growing economy. For us as ActionSA, we say no. We need political intervention to address this issue. And on the other hand, with ANC, we want ANC to understand that we are not going to grow this economy. We are not going to address inequality if we continue with our corruption and putting wrong people into jobs. So I felt, I can't literally find ways to really work with these guys. As a group, I'll get more confused than anything else, because I'm not the kind of person that stand on a fence on issues, more especially serious issues. So I decided, you know what, let me stay out of this, leave us alone as ActionSA. And when we discussed in the Senate of ActionSA, we took a conscious decision, including actually to saying, Herman, you don't have to go into parliament. You can play a strategic role from outside. And that's why we've sent us a team of 6 competent South Africans representing us in parliament, led by Athol Trollip, who is our caucus leader.
Mr. Mashaba, the multi-party charter that obviously was formed months ahead of the elections. Now, I remember the Friday we were all at the IEC at the ROC. I remember you were giving flash interviews, and I could see there was a sense of disappointment. But of course, the numbers were trickling in, and it felt at the time that the possibility of a grand coalition from a national level was going to happen, which was not going to have the likes of the ActionSA or even smaller parties like the UDM. The plans of this multi-party charter were set out in terms of what it needed to do to try and fix the economy and so forth and so forth. Do you, from an ActionSA perspective, was there a disappointment that this multi-party charter was not taking off or could not succeed its initial plan when you looked at those results right over there?
Look, I think if you look at DA's involvement in the multi-party charter, it was not really a genuine way of operation. They came into this arrangement with absolute dishonesty from day one. And I raised this matter, but at the time, I've always said to people, what do we do? If we're sitting with the corrupt ANC on one hand and also DA corrupt, but also right wing. We find ourselves in a very difficult situation, and obviously DA capitalized on us being in the middle. And are we disappointed? No, absolutely not. I think yes, but I think we. If ever there's anyone who has betrayed are the voters. The DA did not betray us. They betrayed South African people, because this project of running the country is not about Herman Mashaba of ActionSA. It's about the people of South Africa. They betrayed the people of South Africa. They've always wanted to work with the ANC from as far back as to 2018, and I'm sure you remember when I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, the reason why I resigned. By that time already, I came across secret meetings with Helen Zille and the NC leadership to have a motion of no confidence against me. What was my sin from Helen Zille was because she was against me focusing on providing services to poor communities, and decided to come out with a campaign to call me an EFF mayor, as if EFF is the only party that cares about poor people. I got into politics because of the inequality that's happening in our country. And then on the other hand, with the ANC corruption and mismanagement, so the two got together, obviously facilitated by the IRR, got the two together to plan a motion of no confidence against me. Lucky enough, because I wasn't born yesterday, I got to know about these meetings beforehand. And you remember before Helen Zille was elected into power, I immediately let South Africa know that if this right-wing elements within DA, they come back, I'm gone. They thought I was joking. And it so happened that Helen Zille was elected, I think on the 20th of October 2019, and the following day I resigned. They thought I was joking, because I don't need politics to survive, and I'm not going to be dictated or be pushed around by politicians. It's for that reason I resigned. So am I disappointed? Absolutely not. I think it gives me an opportunity to learn and make sure that you don't really make the same mistake twice. But at the end of the day, you've got to try, because I'm not the kind of person that gives up. I'm not.
Mr. Mashaba, I have to stop you there. Sorry, we have to go for a break, unfortunately. After the break, I continue my conversation. Yes, ActionSA 6 seats in Parliament, in the National Assembly. So how are they going to hold this government of national unity accountable in their role within the opposition benches? Do stay tuned to Talking Point. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba. Mr. Mashaba, you talk of the opposition within the National Assembly. No one would have thought that the MK party would have been the actual official opposition when you look at the rules and regulations of the National Assembly, and that, of course, of the legislature. Did that come as a surprise to you that a party formed just a few months ago would be making such a massive impact? And of course, this happened with the DA, which was the then opposition party, joining this government of national unity. How much of a surprise did it come to you that they are now sitting in that official opposition bench?
Well, I think one has to really be honest. I think the biggest surprise of this election was the emergence of the MK party. I think Jacob Zuma, we've got to give him credit for being able to manipulate and navigate very difficult issues. You can imagine a political party formed, hardly 6 months before the elections, with no constitution.
Well, they've taken 17% of the ANC's vote.
Yeah, with no constitution, even with them right now, I don't know if they have any constitution or any policies. The only thing they stood for was that let's vote for Jacob Zuma. I mean, who really could have imagined that people will just vote for Jacob Zuma, someone who nearly destroyed this country with the Guptas. But I think we've got to give him credit for being a master of manipulation of issues. Will they sustain what they started? I think only the history and time will tell. I think for us as ActionSA, what is actually where we see a great opportunity is because you have this grand coalition of the ANC and DA, which I'm not sure how it's going to sustain, and I hope they do. And then on the other hand, you've got what they call the Progressive
Caucus,
Coalition
yes.
Caucus of EFF and
MK Party,
MK
ATM,
Party.
yes.
That leaves the space for a party that actually stands for the rule of law, that stands for non-racial South Africa, that stands for free market economy. That space that the DA has left. The party that wants to fight corruption. I mean, I could not believe it when the DA, I mean, even before Parliament was inaugurated already, Helen Zille coming out in defense of Phala Phala, and subsequent to this,
I want to touch on that.
So you can imagine, these are the people a few months ago, even up to going to court about the Phala Phala and so forth. These are people who are saying, Phala Phala, it wasn't as bad as the VBS. So what I'm trying to say is, so basically, the ANC corruption under this grand coalition, if there's no one to guard against it, as a country, we've got major issues.
And that's what I want to touch on. So there's two things I want to bring to your attention, and obviously with ActionSA having its representation in the National Assembly. Now, herein lies the hypocrisy of Phala Phala, because as you mentioned, just a year ago, actually
not a year, a few months
ago, but I mean, I want to go to a year ago where they wanted the motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa, and then all of a sudden, Helen Zille changes the tune, saying, hey, listen, it's nothing, basically. You've had Peter Groenewald from the Freedom Front Plus, and I interviewed him at the ROC, saying that if we go into the National Assembly, we will bring up the potential conversation of Phala Phala with the National Assembly Speaker. So do you feel that the GNU is based on a sense of hypocrisy from a Phala Phala standpoint?
Not just Phala Phala, overall corruption, cadre deployment, everything bad that the ANC has operated on over the last and represented over the last 30 years. You must understand the leadership of the DA right now are mainly people with National Party heritage. So obviously, if they can manipulate ANC to maintain the status quo, for them to continue enjoying the fruits and benefits of South Africa, if they can manipulate and navigate ANC to keep to that, they are safe. They will protect the ANC. So it's about positions. I mean, look at it. I can imagine for ActionSA, there was just no way we would have accepted to serve in the biggest cabinet on earth, in a country with the most unequal society on earth. And the people who are suffering are mainly black people, and it's not their fault. It's many years of colonialism, the apartheid, the evil, brutal system, ANC's corruption. So we need intervention. So as long as ANC is not going to be manipulated by the threat of the imminent collapse of this grand coalition, because they will need each other. I saw something this morning on social media, and I responded to this. One of the senior DA person, I'm sure you're aware, earlier this week or last week, there was this incident of racial challenges in one of the schools in Pretoria.
Yes.
And one of the senior DA persons says, the ANC cannot talk about this. They must focus on bigger pictures. And I'm saying to myself,
Yeah.
is this grand coalition part of the agreements? Is that NC must no longer raise issues of racial attacks and issues? Because the racism, whether it comes from a black or white person, we must not tolerate racism. The same thing, we must never cover for corruption. You can't say we can talk about corruption, but you can't talk about racial issues, regardless of whether it's a black person or a white person. Racism, it's a crime against humanity that we must fight. The very same thing with corruption. So it looks like this grand coalition between the ANC and DA is to cover these issues. Let me give you other examples. When I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, and something that people fail to debate. I don't know why it's media like yourselves. Remember when I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, I don't know if you followed me. I fired three DA executive members of the executive, 3 for corruption. Against the DA's permission, because it had nothing to do, corruption in the city of Johannesburg had nothing to do with the DA. It had to do with corruption. The DA was not happy with me firing these people. But I fired them without the permission. But they kept them as councillors. Now you can imagine the hypocrisy. Because they knew I could not fire these guys as councillors. They tolerated something like this. They never fought. In the 3 years I was the mayor, I uncovered 35 billion rands of fraud and corruption. Did you ever hear a DA helping me to fight this corruption? In the city of Tshwane, let me quickly give you an example of what's happening right now in the city of Tshwane. 2019, DA government in the city of Tshwane gave 194 million rands contract to Edwin Sodi. People of Amanskral are drinking dirty water. DA, 194 million rands to Edwin Sodi. Edwin Sodi's company was not on the city's database, was 40 million rands more expensive, did not know anything about it, gave him money in advance. 2022, the last one I can tell you about, I can tell you more. When we were in coalition with them, they wanted to bring a report to council.
This is in the city of Tshwane.
26 billion rands of an unsolicited bid. As ActionSA, as much as we're governing with them, we rejected, we voted against this. But at the end of the day, they came out, obviously they've got the money and resources, come out with a campaign to blame us as ActionSA for being uncooperative. And I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to people of South Africa, if anyone expects ActionSA to be in to cover corruption because we govern with you, we hope you can call us anything.
Mr. Mashaba, now, you were a member of the DA. You were the city of Johannesburg mayor. Now, when I speak to Musi Maimane, when I speak to Mbali Ntuli, when I speak to Bongani Poloi, all black leaders within the Democratic Alliance, they say the same tune, and you can either, correct me or prove that what I'm saying is obviously correct. That they said that the black leaders were not treated in a respectful manner within the party. And then, of course, comes the part where the DA has always sold itself as a party of being not corrupt, being a party with a clean slate. They used the city of Cape Town as a supposed project of them that, listen, look how the city of Cape Town is. We can run a city that's clean. There's also the Ronaldo House, who's still an MP at this very moment. The DA said that they're going to be, of course, taking the disciplinary hearings. Now, is there a hypocritical aspect of the Democratic Alliance? I know you're not a member, and we'd like to bring somebody from the DA on shows like this to talk about this, but somebody who was a former member of the DA, do you sense that hypocrisy is something that upsets a lot of South Africans, especially black South Africans?
Well, after getting cross with the ANC, I had no one to vote for, and I voted for the DA, resulting with them in 2015, asking me to be their mayoral candidate, because I was really frustrated and frustrated of being an armchair critic. I accepted to be the mayoral candidate, and I became the mayor. And I'm on record to say that in the 3 years I was the mayor, the DA was the most difficult partner in that coalition. was the most difficult because they were against provision of services to poor communities. And because I wasn't a pushover, I was not prepared to listen to them. Actually, we reached a stage in 2019 where I said to the DA, because they wanted me to really give them reports on a monthly basis on how the municipality was working. In the beginning, I had my team to give them that information, and then I'll attend their meetings from time to time when I had time, because that job was a very punishing job. I had no time for politics. But we reached a stage where we were no longer on talking terms because I think somewhere around July or so in 2019, I had government responsibility on that particular night. But the DA expected me to attend the meeting to come and brief them about what was happening in the city. I then sent my chief of staff and MMC of finance, Funzi and Michael, to go and brief them. They refused. They wanted me. In the meantime, I had government responsibilities. I had no, there was just no way you'd expect me to abdicate my responsibility as the mayor to go and attend to political matters. But I sent qualified people to go and give them the report. And from that, I said, the way you treated my staff is totally unacceptable. And that means you want me to put the party ahead of society, and that's not going to happen from me. And that's what really created the problem. Basically, for as far as I'm concerned, with the DA, I grew up in an environment where a black person like me is called a cheeky black. I don't know if you've heard of
I've
that.
heard of them, yes.
Yeah, no.
Yes.
So basically, obviously, they've never come to me direct that I'm a cheeky black. But I could really see that these people, the reason why they negotiated with the ANC, because they realized they're dealing with a cheeky black. And if I must be called a cheeky black, I'm happy to live with that title. But no one is going to really dictate to me, more especially on issues where I must be insulted and ask the DA to intervention, when I must be told that I can't provide toilets to informal settlements, portable toilets. You tell me I must go and cut grass in Senton. And when I ask for the party to defend me, they're not interested. They'd rather go and call the ANC to have a motion of no confidence against me. So as far as my reading of the DA right now, they are on the right side of the Freedom Front Plus. I've had an opportunity to engage both parties when I was the mayor, even when we had the multi-party charter. I can tell you, in terms of honesty, I would rather deal with the Freedom Front Plus in terms of honesty than the DA. And that's something the ANC has got to be very careful about.
I have to stop you, unfortunately, due to time. After the break, I continue my conversation with Herman Mashaba, the leader of ActionSA. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm still in conversation with Herman Mashaba, the leader of ActionSA. Mr. Mashaba, I want to touch on that racism incident that has happened. We've obviously covered it on our news bulletins here at Hilaal TV. My colleague in Cape Town also told me of a very similar incident that had happened in that part, where you still have children who think it's okay to go ahead and discriminate, especially against black children. You spoke earlier on about a member of the DA saying, well, shove it to the side. I mean, surely that can't be the attitude. Surely this has to be addressed. How is ActionSA now going to say, we now need to take action to try and make sure that incidents like this do not happen in schools? And I'm a product of a multiracial school. And I myself experienced it. Right? But we dealt with it in a way where there was a collective of us as children of color dealt with it. But not many schools have that privilege of dealing with it in different ways. So from a ActionSA perspective, how is that going to be dealt with?
Well, I think we're fortunate enough to have a voice in National Assembly, and we've got a fantastic team of 6 of our committed South Africans who are going to bring this matter through Parliament into the public domain. Obviously, we're not the government. We can't come out with legislation So we will raise these matters, and no one is going to stop us. And I really hope that the ANC is not going to fall into the trap of DA's threat, that to maintain this government of national unity, they must not address racism. And on the other hand, they must not talk about corruption. So I think we've got to really be very careful, because for us as ActionSA, I can tell you, when racism raises its head and we see it, we are going to unapologetically going to deal with it, because it's the right thing to do. When corruption raises its head anyway, regardless who commits it, we are going to raise it, and we are going to be unapologetic about this. That's why parties like ActionSA are real crucial, because the progressive caucus of MK and EFF, unfortunately for us as ActionSA, we find them to really be too radical. It's not really what we as ActionSA would want to see, because for us as ActionSA, we want a non-racial South Africa. We are unapologetic about this. But that does not mean that we must forget about the past, and we must not really discuss it, because I lived 34 years of my life under an evil system of apartheid. So I'm not going to allow the Helen Zellers of this world say we must not really discuss these matters. We are going to discuss them so that our children can really be safeguarded. You can imagine these two matters that you've referred to happening at school with kids who were born after 1994. Where did they get this racial stereotype?
It starts at home, doesn't it?
It starts at home. So we must confront it. And and people who are still practicing apartheid are a small minority, including people who are involved in corruption are a minority. So we cannot obviously on one side say the black people are corrupt, or we must say white people are corrupt, because it's a small group. Whether corrupt, it doesn't mean if one black person is corrupt, then you must say all black people are corrupt. Or one white person is racist, then you must say all whites are racist. I can tell you, I come from a world where in 1984, at the age of roughly 24, started a company called Black Like Me, because I did not have the expertise to manufacture hair care products. I took a chance to approach an Afrikaner from Boksburg called Johan Griel. And Johan Griel and I did not just really make money by producing good quality hair products, because I could sell, Johan could make the products. But the role that we've played in social cohesion, it's really very more powerful, because for people to be racist, it's government that promotes it, and corruption also will only thrive when you don't have government that can have the criminal justice system that can deal with corruption. It's got nothing to do with race or gender. It's got to do with individuals. That's why we need laws and we need interventions to deal with some of these challenges.
Mr. Mashaba, for that social cohesion to happen, I mean, there has to be equality. Now, you come from Hammanskraal, and we've seen the water crisis that has happened there, where polio, for example, was in the water. And we know about the dangers with regards to that. We've seen the urban, the rural areas, there's still no real development there. The roads are terrible, especially in the Eastern Cape. We've seen in the townships.
All over.
The townships.
I mean, provincial roads and
exactly.
And the
I mean, in order for that social cohesion to really happen, what role has to be played from members of the legislature like ActionSA who are sitting there, the executive, and those in power to try and make sure that for a social cohesion to happen, and I'm not talking about sport, because yes, sports brings that euphoria, but it lasts, as euphoria is, for very little time. Because people want service delivery, people want equality, people want to earn a living. We still have the highest unemployment rate in the world. So how is legislature, you mentioned the 6 ActionSA members that are sitting in parliament, the ActionSA members that represent the provincial legislatures across the continent, and the executive going to play that role to say, we have to create equality for that cohesion to happen?
Well, I think I really hope and trust that this grand coalition of the ANC and DA can hold each other accountable to ensure that when they come out with programs, they are not just really coming out with fiction and propaganda. It must be service delivery. We cannot allow 30 years into our democracy, people of Alexander to live under those conditions. People of Amanskral, 18 years now, with no clean water, clean running water. And you have a DA government giving contracts to companies run by Edwin Sodi. We had no idea how to fix that. I think if these two organizations can hold each other accountable for service delivery, put in competent people, stop corruption, have independent criminal justice system to ensure that you put the money under mattresses, there must be consequences. You mustn't say pala pala, it is not as bad as VBS. When people go and have a bank heist, as politicians are taking poor people's money, there must be consequences. And put in professional people, regardless of race. Let's look at merit. When we put in someone to run a government department, it must be someone competent, and we hold those people accountable. But this government must be sensitive to the plight of the poor and the marginalized. The preference has got to be there. They must run a unapologetic, run a pro-poor government so that we uplift the poor people, take them out of poverty. And unfortunately, I don't know if ANC is going to be able to convince the DA to really buy into that. But also, ANC must be committed when they talk about pro-poor, not to go and have bank heist and be involved in corruption. I think we need a change of mindset and commitment to public service.
The public procurement bill has been signed. That, of course, on the paper of it, as it is as legislation, something which can stop potential procurement without fact-checking. Are you buying into that? Is that something that this government of national unity can actually adhere to, given that it has been signed into law?
You know, you can come out with as many laws as you want. You can have Bible-sized laws every day passed through Parliament. As long as there are no consequences for wrongdoing, everything else, it's not where the paper it's written on. I can tell you, for us in South Africa, for as long as we're not prepared to have an independent criminal justice system to be able to prosecute without any fear or favor, I cannot really see this country moving forward. The laws are not going to be the solution when you don't have consequences for wrongdoing.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba. You stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. The Constitution says South Africa belongs to all that live in it. Mr. Mashaba, like you and myself, we are South Africans that adhere to the Constitution. But there have been lobby groups that have said that ActionSA's take on migration is a little bit extreme in terms of how the influx of migrants needs to come into South Africa. Now, you have said, of course, paperwork is necessary. The necessary laws need to be adhered to. Do you feel ActionSA threads on the right line in terms of dealing with migrants and people who want to come work in South Africa?
Well, one thing that we must accept is South Africa. South Africa is a sovereign state with laws governing the movement of people in and out of our country. And South Africa was built at the back of migrants over the last 300-400 years. And I personally believe, and I've said this even the time when I was attacked for being xenophobic when I was the mayor, that I think for this country to succeed, we need to continue bring the skills, investments in this country. However, people must come here legally, and when they're here, they must respect our laws. We cannot accept, and I'm not going to apologize to anyone, where we can have people running 2 billion rands drug labs in our country illegally. People having military training in our country, coming here legally. You have the Guptas being offered South African identity documents illegally, and you expect us or me to accept it. I'm not going to accept it. 12 million South Africans today, as I speak to you, are unemployed. South Africa is not looking for people to come and work in restaurants when 12 million of our own people are unemployed. I think we need the right skills to be attracted to South Africa, but they must follow the right channels. We need investments in this country, and money must come through the Reserve Bank, not through mattresses and sofas. So these are things that I'm saying is they are not negotiable as far as ActionSA is concerned. We need to encourage people of the world to come and enjoy this beautiful country of ours, but please come here legally. Anyone who's in this country, in South Africa, illegally bringing drugs to come and destroy our youth and our way of life, those people must be deported. We must have a review and really look at people who acquired South African citizenship over the last 30 years to see how they acquired. Those who acquired it illegally, they must go to jail. Once they've served, then we must send them back to their countries. And South Africans were involved in corruption with them, including senior officials in the Home Affairs who compromise the sovereignty of our country. They must face the consequences of their action.
But does South Africa, from an infrastructure perspective, have the ability to do that? Given that when budgets are passed, sometimes it's not the budgets, like, for example, the Home Affairs Department would say, well, it's not enough to go ahead and curb this. So
No,
how do you
it's a level of corruption. It's a corruption. This is a cancer of corruption that has actually compromised our country. Let me give you an example that some people might feel uncomfortable. Do you remember we had a minister of, at one stage, a minister of Home Affairs called Malusi Gigaba?
Yes, I remember him, yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, he's a member of parliament now.
He's a member of parliament.
Yeah.
Giving the Guptas who were working with Jacob Zuma to destroy this country, giving them South African identity documentation. Now, can you imagine when you have a minister involved in giving instructions to officials? So it becomes a free-for-all. If you look at corruption at the moment under Cyril Ramaphosa, it's an all-time record. We thought corruption under Jacob Zuma was bad, and it was bad. But under Cyril Ramaphosa, it's gone to the next, to the highest level. Actually, last night, at home, I was just going through some reports, and one of the international organizations did a study on 7,000 organizations worldwide. South Africa, the ANC government is the 16th corrupt organization on earth. Out of 7,000 the organization, ANC is number 16. I mean, I said to myself, and I wonder how must we feel as South Africans. So for me, every time that when someone looks at me as a South African, and black for that matter, they think I'm corrupt. And corruption is not black or white. Corruption, I can tell you, dates back from the apartheid days, from colonialism, from the ANC government, including right now with people who are serving in this grand coalition. So we need a new mindset, but that mindset is not something that we must negotiate. It must be something that we must practice. How you practice, come out with independent criminal justice system. We cannot have people like the advocate Batoyi keeping quiet. I don't know when last did we ever hear from
It's
from her.
it's been a while. It's been a
You
while,
know,
yeah.
I mean, when she came into office, she raised the issue of the budget. Honestly, I know personally when I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, the 35 billion rands, when the head of Jiffy's gave them prepared cases, serious cases. Some of them, most of those cases, or some of those cases are clear as daylight. They just needed to really prosecute. So she did not really need any funding whatsoever. She just needed to prosecute. Right now, almost nothing has happened with most of those cases to date. And she's disappeared. I don't know if she's still in office or not. So once you've got some things like this, I mean, you look at the last minister of police, Becky Cele,
yeah.
he was running from one crime scene to the next. And you ask yourself, but now where's the National Police Commissioner? Because Becky Cele was the minister, was the national commissioner, was the provincial commissioner, was a detective, he was a constable, he was the spokesperson. And now you ask yourself, who's leading the police when you have this kind of something like this, when 86 people are being murdered in this country every single day. So if we're not going to come out with actual action regarding these issues, unfortunately, this country will soon become another failed African state.
I'm going to ask my director, Darren, and my directors, Darren and Umar, just to give me some time. I need to ask you this question, Mr. Mashaba. You tick all of the right boxes pro-poor. You speak about the horrors of apartheid. You talk of the oppression that had happened, right? You're very close, and I know that because a lot of people, outside of the broadcasting sphere, Muslim people, you're very close with a lot of the Muslims within South Africa. You're very close to them. A lot of them were disappointed in ActionSA's take on the current genocide that is happening in Palestine. And I want to ask this question because you said you're a person, as Mr. Mashaba himself, and ActionSA who follows the rule of law. The ICJ, of course, have given two rulings, one of plausible genocide that is happening, and of course, the fact that the occupied territories within Palestine, especially the West Bank, is considered occupied and is illegal. So I want to ask you, Mr. Mashaba, when you look at what's currently happening in Palestine, and I want to talk from an ActionSA perspective, from one human being to another, what is your take now on what's happening? 40,000 people that have been killed in Gaza. And we both value, human life as one human to another. Your take on it. I want to get just Mr. Herman Mashaba and ActionSA's take on what is happening now in Gaza and the devastation that is happening right there.
Well, let me obviously be direct and clear with you. I think the murder of any person, it's totally unacceptable. It is evil. But at the same time, one has to really recognize the issue of what's happening in the Middle East. Very complex issue that's been going on for more than 2,000 years. And I can tell you with my own personal experience, anyone who takes sides can only exacerbate the issue in the Middle East. So for me, without standing on the fence, I can only really pray for the Palestinians and the Jewish people, that one day the leadership can emerge that can get them to understand they need to coexist. Unfortunately, you have the radical groups from both ends. Majority of the Palestinian people are good people. Majority of the Jewish people are good people who wants to live together. But unfortunately, you've got the radical ones. Until that happens, I can tell you Herman Mashaba can only really pray for them.
But you see, here's the thing, right? So when you look at the land itself, I mean, take Alexandra, for example, or Lanka, and if you would like to, Mr. Mashaba, you maybe go and visit these areas in the West Bank. I mean, when obviously we hope and pray that a ceasefire happens in Gaza, to visit the places to see how the people live, the refugee camps. Now, we talk about Alexandra, and it's important because Alexandra needs to be uplifted for the people to have a better life. But if you look at what's happening in these refugee camps, it's a very similar situation. So would you, Mr. Mashaba, be willing to, as a representative of South Africa, as somebody who sees it as a leadership, to visit these places and look at the dire needs of these people and really understand what it is? Because it's very similar. It's very similar to the Bantustans. You lived during apartheid. You saw what happened. And that's what the Palestinian people are saying, that we are living under oppression. We are being told what to do. We are being told how much water to have, how much of food to have. Surely that's something that can resonate with someone like you.
I think one thing for sure is that in every situation, there's two sides to a story. And I think that's what I said to you earlier on. If you want to exacerbate the plight of the Palestinians and the Jewish people, take sides. And I'm saying to you, I will pray for them, and I pray for them every single day. And unfortunately, I'm not in government to influence foreign policy, because if I was in government, I would obviously really have a team that can really get the Jewish and the Palestinian people to actually accept the fact that, guys, if you reject to coexist, you can only continue at this route that is totally unacceptable. But at the end of the day, I don't really believe that I would really want to really be the one fueling the tensions in the Middle East, because by taking sides, you can only take sides at the peril of the suffering people of Palestine and Israel.
Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time. Mr. Mashaba, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV. It's been a fruitful conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Really wonderful, and keep up the good work.
No, thank you so much. That is Herman Mashaba, the leader of ActionSA. That's all we have for you on Talking Point. From myself, Firas Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Jazakallah so much for staying with us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.